Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Dedicated Show. My name is Kate Strashny. I'm the founder of Dedicated and your host for the Dedicated Show. This is show number 2 for 2024, and I'm super excited. This morning, I announced that I'm planning to host 100 episodes of the Dedicated Show in 2024. So if you're interested in being a guest and have a topic on data or AI that you want to talk to us about, you can either comment here as you're watching the show or send me a note privately on LinkedIn, or if you can find me on YouTube, you can drop a comment there as well. Now, in this episode, we're going to talk about transferable data skills. And I think it's so important because most of us, we start a career in one industry and we tend to transfer ourselves out of that industry either by our own will or something happens that we sort of have to look outside of the industry to get that new job. So as you're joining us here, I want to ask everybody a question. I'll put it up on screen here. Have you ever had to switch industries during your career? Yes or no? A simple yes or no will do. Just let us know. Think back to when you started. Have you stayed in that same industry? If not, just let us know. Okay, so the Dedicated Show is all about interactive engagement. So if you've got questions, you've got comments that you want to engage with us on the show, feel free to put that into the comments, into the chat, either on my profile or my guest profile, and we'll go through as many of those as possible. As always, I have a special guest waiting behind in the backstage area, and I'm going to go ahead and bring her on in just a second. Her name is Monica K. Royale, and she is the owner of Nerd Nourishment. She's also the host of the Data Podcast for Nerds show. So I'm going to go ahead and bring Monica up on our stage here. We also have matching glasses. Hi, Monica. Welcome to the Dedicated Show.
Thank you, Kate, for having me on the show. Hey, nerds. How are y'all?
And I love your shirt. Is that like in a swag shop or?
Thank you. Yes, we have swag.
Nice. Awesome. I'm looking at some of the comments. So we've already got people saying yes and yep and yes planning. So folks are planning to maybe leave their industry. We've got one no. So Umar's been lucky enough to stick with one industry. And just a quick question I'll address here. Mohammed, yes, the recording will stay on LinkedIn and YouTube. So without further ado, Monica, have you ever had to switch industries in your career?
I have, but that's because I started out as an auditor. And when you are an external auditor, you audit different industries. So it's kind of a cool gig, kind of related to consulting in that respect, where you just hop different companies and learn all kinds of new things all the time.
That's very interesting because so when I was working at a bank, this was pre-consulting days. This was just like so many years ago, maybe 15 years ago. I don't know, something like that. That's kind of scary to think of it that way. But I was working closely with audit. It was risk management and audit. And you're right, that position sort of throws you into all those different departments and sectors that you're auditing because you sort of pick up a little bit of that. Now, before we get into our topic of transferable data skills, I want to start with you, Monica. Tell us all about yourself. And specifically, I want to know, what does your day-to-day look like?
Yes. All right. So I'll start off with a little bit of an origin story. So as mentioned, I started off as an auditor, and that really just means that you're testing that companies are working the way that they should be working. So you learn a lot about what certain companies do, all kinds of departments in that company, and then also you get experience with different companies. So banks, colleges, all kinds of different companies that I've worked with. And at that time, I didn't really know anything about data. I kind of just accidentally learned about data within my career. But once I did learn about data, I was like, okay, this is what I want to do. I was, since that point, I was born my data enthusiast. So just asked my manager to be put on more of those types of jobs, those types of projects. and just learned more about data, hopped from, job to job and just learning more interesting things. And then today where I'm at is Nerd Nourishment. And I love sharing, things that I've learned along my way. I, being in audit, have a background in security, risk, and compliance. So I nerd out on data security a lot of times. And then also because I understand that, you learn all kinds of things in the different roles that you're at, I talk a lot about transferable skills. So there's some skills that are kind of just ingrained in you that you bring with you from job to job that really help you in any job that you're at.
Yes, absolutely. And I can definitely relate that there are skills that even from my school days that I've still sort of had to transfer
Yeah.
over to my career, from one career to another, from one industry to the next. But before we get into the actual skills, I do want to know more about Nerd Nourishment. What does that actually cover? What do you do there?
Yes. So I started Nerd Nourishment just sharing things on LinkedIn. Actually, Kate, you were a big part of this. You posted something in like 2019, like way back when, asking like, "Are you a consumer or a contributor?" And I was like, I kind of just read people's LinkedIn posts, but I want to contribute more, and so sparked
Oh,
my
I
interest
remember
there.
that. Yes. Vaguely, it was a poll or something. Do you consume content or do you
Yeah,
produce content? And I think it was like
absolutely.
97% were consumers and 3% were producers.
Yep.
So,
Yep. So then I just started sharing things that I was learning on a daily basis, and that just kind of kept rolling. I did like 100 days of learning thing. And once that was over, I was like, okay, I still want to continue to do this. How do I do it? And at that point, everyone had their own like personal hashtags. And I really like to play on words. So I came up with Nerd Nourishment hashtag, and then that kind of just became a company. And so I continue to share things that I'm learning, sharing things that I have learned in the past, and now helping out other folks that are trying to transition into the data space. I just rolled out a program, a data career strategy program in particular. And so hopefully I'll get to help out so many people that are interested in data.
great. And I'm sure you will. So we've got a comment from George Farrakhan about your background on your shelf, and it's got me like staring at your background. So he's saying you have a light bulb light on there. I couldn't find the light bulb, but I see a lot of little rubber ducks. So I wanted to know what's up with that. That's
Yes. So the rubber ducks I did, I think it was like last year. I got an advent calendar in December of all of these ducks. And I have the series is on my YouTube channel. And it was when I was first trying out my YouTube channel. So the videos are probably really bad. But I learned a lot about videos and how to do them and whatnot. And so it was really fun. I was just sharing lots of things about data security, all kinds of fun stuff with ducks.
Listen, why not? I actually was just talking to, I think I was talking to Ryan on the last show. Maybe this was before we actually went live. I always forget what happened during live, post live, and pre live. But we were talking about some of my first YouTube videos, and they are so bad. I refuse to remove them, but they are so bad. It's like me reading, not even making eye contact with. And I was like in a dark basement. It was just so bad on every level. The audio was bad, and I'm like, you know what? I did learn. So that brings us all around back to transferable skills, right? Because you try things, you learn things, and you use those skills later on, and you work on developing them. Now, bringing this around to data specifically, what would you say are some of those must-have skills that are sort of easily transferable from one industry to the next?
Yeah, so I have 5 that I like to share a lot. There's so
Okay.
many more, but the 5 that I like to share a lot are curiosity, adaptability, communication, problem solving, and having good attention to detail. And this is something that you just learn while you are working. It just inherently you build out these soft skills, and you can use them in basically any job that you're at. But in particular, big fan that will help you in the data industry.
So curiosity is something that I see everywhere when people are like, oh, we want someone who's curious. Now, is that something you have to be born with? Can you actually hone that skill? How can you become more curious? Like, can you just care a little more? Is that what it is?
Right? I thought about this too, because I actually thought it was something that you lose, right? Because when you're a kid, you're so curious. And then as you get older, it seems like you lose that curiosity and you have to work on it to keep it up. I think it's just being kind of creative. Also, it's something that you can work on to just build out your creativity. I think you could do the same for your curiosity.
Yeah, I think curiosity is a good way to actually switch industries, right? When you have those skills that you were talking about, and like, hey, how do I apply these skills to a whole new realm of data? And I actually love that. When I was working in consulting and I had the data to work with, I was picking up data visualization skills that I so badly wanted to practice. But as most folks can relate, when you're within a company, they have brand guidelines, they have rules, and they have the actual task, your objective. You have to create this dashboard for those people, and it has to look like that. Where I wanted to just practice and I would just get random data. I think that was probably driven by curiosity of like, how can I apply my skills elsewhere and how can I play with new data?
Yeah. And then also, like, I think if you put your brain in that mind state of being a kid, just always have fun and think like you're a toddler. Like, ask the 5 whys. You know how kids always ask why.
Yes.
I mean, that's a good way to also build your curiosity. Don't just stop at one why. Just be like, oh, okay, that's it. No, ask why.
Yes, I have kids, so I know about the 5 whys, and it's like, oh God, this is all I know. I have no other information for you, child. After the 3rd why, usually I'm done. Or like, well, let's Google it. Let's just Google this together because let's learn. So Monica, you listed some really good soft skills, and I wanted to touch on some of the more technical skills. So there's like programming, there's SQL, there's data viz, there's storytelling. Would you consider those skills to also be transferable from one industry to another?
In a sense, yes. Of course, that depends on what industry you're working on, what role that you're specifically in. When I first started out in my data analyst responsibilities, I only really worked with Excel. And then I started learning programming and SQL and building on data viz stuff. But it really did just start out with Excel for quite a while. So again, depending on where you're at. And to answer George's, I was going to point it. I think he saw my light over here.
Let's see the light. Is it detachable? Where's your light? Or is it just
if you put me on the other screen?
Let's do this.
There we go. This one right here.
Okay, I'll go.
So it's because I used to work at an electric company. So they gave out these light bulbs for us. I know why George likes the light bulb though.
Yeah, George is obsessed with light bulbs. I think, I don't see the light bulb next to his name now. I don't know. George, did you remove your light bulb?
I've been seeing a lot of people get rid of their emojis in their names. I don't know if it's a trend that's happening or what's going on there.
I had to. So I don't know if you followed me at that point or knew me back then. I used to have a little princess crown after mine because I wanted to be the self-proclaimed queen of data or some. I honestly, what I wanted to do was make it easier to find, like if I'm tagged or something, easier to find myself because the symbol is just so good at catching your eyes. But then at some point I saw people did start removing it. LinkedIn has basically told people to start removing it. And if you want to be like a verified person on the platform, you have to upload your driver's license and stuff. So unless you have that on your documentation, which I did not have a little crown on there. So I had to remove it. Do you still have yours? I think you had something, right?
I might have had something, but I don't think I do anymore.
Or maybe it's because I always see that little brain when you post things with the
I
nerd
do.
character.
Every time I comment or post, I have to put a nerd emoji on there.
Okay, that might be the reason I'm associating the little emoji. Hey, you're doing a great job with branding. That's awesome.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, and then my little nerd.
Yes, exactly. You've done a really good job with branding. Like the
Thank
consistency
you.
is really good.
Thank you.
So brings me to my next question. So let's say this person's really curious and they want to play with data. They have a job in their company, but sometimes, and I've definitely faced this as well, the company is like, no, Monica, you can't see this data. They can see this data and you can see that data. So what are some of the reasons why companies sort of maybe talk about data democratization and like data for all, but then sort of hoard their data in other cases?
Yeah, I can't speak to all situations and all companies, but I know from my experience, it all ties into data privacy and data security. So there is a least privileges rule that's like a best practice. So only people that actually need data for their jobs can get access to their jobs. What gets confusing is when I was an auditor, I clearly needed data to perform my job, but there were so many different hurdles that I had to jump over and educate like the security team or the IAM team or whoever was in charge of giving me that authorization as to like convincing them this is what I need for my job. It got to the point where when I was at a data governance type of role, I asked to then write some like policies that incorporated such things in there for the auditors that stated like, yes, auditors need data for their jobs. Please give them the data.
Yeah, I mean, I would assume they need it, especially if they're verifying data, they'll need to
Yes.
see it.
Yes.
It just makes sense, but okay. So I did see a question here from George about, no, not that one. Clicked on the wrong thing. So the question from George was, what's the one skill that you should always grow? I'm going to try to think about this one as well. And folks in the audience, let us know what you think that's one skill is that you should always grow. Monica, feel free to take your time on this one if you need.
If it's something from my list, I would say adaptability, just because in the tech and data realm, things are literally changing on a daily basis, and you need to be adaptable and move and learn how to navigate the space.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially now, things are changing even more quickly. It's like every morning is just like, oh, look, a new thing has come up. I think I'd pick adaptability is definitely high on the list, but I'd probably pick communication because you can always get a little bit better at maybe being more efficient, more effective, and how you get your message across, learning to speak the different languages of that industry. And I think that's one point we should probably make here is that lots of these skills, the soft skills, the technical skills are transferable, but what is not really as transferable is your domain knowledge, right? So you have to sort of learn how to speak a whole different language. The stakeholders are thinking that there are different things that are important to them that might have not been as important to your prior stakeholders. So there's definitely a learning curve there, and communicating with the different people, I would say keep growing that one if you can.
Yeah, that's a huge one is the domain knowledge, because that's kind of what sets yourself apart from other analysts is really knowing like how the business operates. And what helps with that is your curiosity, wanting to know how the business operates and understanding the details behind that.
Let's tie in the other two. What were the other two? Come on, because you're tying it all together.
Yes, problem solving. So you want to solve problems within your company, right? So in order to do that, the domain knowledge really does help because it's like, what problems do I want to solve? And then the attention to detail, just as you're learning all of this stuff, you need to, pick out those details that are very important in how to solve the problems.
Yes. And I just see comments here. So Don is talking about domain knowledge is huge. Not only for data analysts, data scientists, I'm working with a video crew that specializes in like they're just do video content, right? So they're the ones with the cameras and the lights and the microphones. They're called Deep Vibe, so giving them a shout out here. But part of the reason I keep gravitating to wanting to work with them is their domain knowledge. They work with data and AI companies. So as a videographer, you probably mostly wouldn't care as much sort of what type of videos you're making. Like if they're interviews, right? But they focus on those specific topics. And it turns them more into a magnet for people who want to do content in that field. So definitely works. I mean, especially for data analysts, if you know the industry versus somebody who doesn't, I obviously want you on the team because you know what I'm talking about. You know that 100 is not a big deal, whereas 1,000 might be a big deal. So you sort of know the context, where I think that's the hardest thing to really learn, because you need to be curious. You need to care about that stuff.
Absolutely.
So another one was adaptability. So you already talked about that, and storytelling. So it sort of ties into communication, but wanted to get your thoughts on where do you think storytelling lies in this importance field of data skills?
Yeah, I think that's really huge because it helps kind of navigate your communication in a way that would captivate your audience more. Communication in the way that kind of I originally thought about it as a transferable skill was, going out and talking with different stakeholders or different people within your company. But with the storytelling, that comes into play like when you're giving presentations. So really kind of like being able to resonate with your audience that you're sharing your data with.
How can people actually practice that skill? Especially, let's say, if they don't have a job right now, they're not employed, but they want to practice their data storytelling skills.
Well, I would think of my rubber duck. So I'll bring in my rubber duck again. So there's a concept called rubber duck debugging.
Okay.
So if you get stuck in your coding, then you want to talk to an inanimate object, a rubber duck, and basically what problems you're trying to solve. Hands. Yeah, you can talk to
I'll
your
talk
hands.
to the hands. That's
Talk to the So anyway, where I was getting with this is that it's very similar to rubber duck debugging. You could just talk out loud, give a presentation to yourself or your rubber duck, or think about maybe recording yourself and watching back. That's something that I like to share when people are like practicing interviews.
Yeah.
Is to record yourself and watch yourself and
It's so
learn
hard to
about
do.
your
It's
little.
so easy to say, but
It is.
I still don't really want to watch myself. Like after the show is done, I'll watch you, Monica, but I don't really want to watch myself or hear myself. I feel like it's gone down that what am I doing there kind of feeling. But especially in the beginning was terrible. But you're so right. The more you do that, the more comfortable you get with actually getting the words out. It is a little bit awkward to just like you and your camera. So I do think having a friend that you can explain it to a couple times is a slightly easier because it's less awkward. But if you don't have friends, get a duck. That's a lesson learned. You have plenty of them, so you must be busy all day long. You're just
Yes, all the time. I'm constantly talking to myself.
Listen, I actually talk to myself too. Okay, a question here. This is interesting. So what about selling, marketing for the project and for oneself? How's that for a skill?
That's something that I personally am still trying to work on. Kate, you would know, owning your own business, you kind of have to self-promote and talk about yourself a lot as well. So that's something that's important and related to, like, if you have a data analysis and presenting it to your stakeholders, those kinds of skills are pretty much the same because you're selling the results and potential solutions to the stakeholders. And so you want to be able to sell it to the stakeholders so that they're like, yes, I do need that solution.
Yeah, and I think it stems from a confidence in yourself first, maybe from practicing with all your ducks and stuff, but also a confidence in your data, right? Like you're the one who spent the time analyzing, visualizing, cleaning, prepping, answering questions, pulling insights. And I think that actually could help you get the confidence. So the more you know your stuff, the more you can relate it to the domain that you're speaking about and the stakeholders you're speaking to, you just become a better marketer and better seller. And There is, yes, this personal thing of where you don't want to be a self-promoter. And I think there is a balance, but as a business owner, I think that is something that we can all do a better job at. Some people are too good at it where they're just like, look at me, I'm awesome.
Yeah.
And then the others are just like, oh no, who am I don't know anything. So it's a balance, I think, between those two. What do you think?
Absolutely. Yes. That's something that I'm actually, again, working on this year is the self-promotion and getting myself out there. So again, thank you for having me on the show.
Oh, of course, yes. And how did you get on the show, Monica? What happened? What was the process?
I reached out to you and asked to be on the show.
It's as easy as that. Yes. And I created a post
Easy.
saying I'm looking for guests for the show. And you're like, I can be a guest on the show. And there you are. Like a few days later, right? You're on the show. And it is sometimes as easy as raising your hand. You might not get a yes every single time, but if you ask 10 different people, some of them will say yes.
Absolutely.
Wanted to shift over to continuous learning as sort of our getting closer to the end question, because things keep shifting. You might be at a place where you're comfortable with your skills, you think they're transferable, you think they're the best, and you can go to any industry and take over and dominate. But then a week goes by and things have changed and new tools have come up. So instead of chasing the new shiny object every time something new pops up, like how do you actually keep leveling up your skills and staying relevant in this very rapidly changing time?
I think it comes down to learning how to learn effectively. And this comes to me with my auditing background, because I was auditing so many different departments and so many different companies. I had to quickly learn each of those different situations. And so if you are able to learn effectively and learn quickly, then while this realm is changing, it won't really affect you as much because you'll be able to, keep up with the paces.
You reminded me of something I heard about this morning. Yes, before our show, I went to a yoga class because why not? I do yoga more now. And the instructor, she usually starts off with a speech, which I love. It's kind of like, it's always different for every class. But today was actually very similar to what you just said, learning how to learn. She was talking about this concept for yoga, but then she also talks about like, how can this impact you at work? Like she's really good at what she does. But she was saying that, let's say you were given a new tool, for example, to use, and it's, I don't know, calendar management tool, something everyone can probably relate to. But you've been using Outlook, and now they want you to use Calendly, for example. And you're like, this is new. My way's been working. Why am I going to even start changing it? And that's the case for a lot of people with all sorts of skills, right? They're like, well, I know what I'm doing. I can just use Excel. I don't need to level up or use a different tool, even though it will save me time, be more accurate, and just better in general. Not that, Excel's bad, but it's just an example. Don't get alarmed, Excel lovers, okay? But one thing she mentioned was, you said learning how to learn and doing it quickly, but in a way, doing it slowly, where, for example, you give yourself the time to try it in a very small way. So don't get overwhelmed with like, okay, now I have to do this massive overhaul of how I do my job, but just literally click on it and try it. You'd be surprised how many people are afraid to just like open Tableau, for example. When I was back in my data analytics world, my insight strategy role, they were all using Excel. And I'm like, well, Tableau is really easy. Just open it. They're like, oh my God, no, I'm going to break something. Something bad's going to happen. It's this fear of the unknown. So I think taking those small steps, even like you said with your videos, right? You weren't too thrilled with how they were going in the beginning, but you took your ducks, you taught them things, and like you look way more comfortable now, right? And you probably feel more comfortable on camera now, and you're just like here and owning it. So those small little baby steps can help. They're still scary, but it helps you get to that next step. Yeah. So I do want to hear a little bit more about your podcast. So what sort of topics do you talk about? Where can people learn more about that specific podcast?
Yeah, so the data podcast for nerds, where we get to talk with amazing professionals and ask them all about how they are using data to solve the world's problems. And we talk a lot about these soft skills that data professionals use on a daily basis. So what are they actually using?
Mhm.
And I like to incorporate what I call fun bits. And that's where they talk about their different hobbies that they have that actually make them better data professionals. We've had all kinds of people with fun hobbies like Legos, movies, music, puppets. You might know who that is.
No
Uh,
idea. Data and puppets? Wait, hold on. It'll come to me, I'm sure. Could it be? Hold on. Scott Taylor?
Yes. That's the best part about it, is because you get to listen to people's hobbies and then how it actually translates and makes them a better data professional.
Wow, I love that. And you mentioned, so you talk about how you solve the world's problems. I'm so happy for you because those are never going away. You're never going to have a time where we don't have problems in the world. So you always have guests to talk to. Monica, I want to, ask you the last question I usually ask my guests is, where can people go to learn more, to follow you, do you have a website? Where do people find you?
Yes, I basically live on LinkedIn, so please connect with me on LinkedIn. And if you would like, also please subscribe to my YouTube channel. That's where the Data Podcast for Nerds is mainly hosted. And I do also have some fun videos on there if you want to learn more and watch me talk with ducks. And then another fun video, I teach my husband about data through hot sauce.
I saw that one. That was awesome. It's
That was
these
really
unique
fun.
videos that really are memorable. So content creators, pay attention to Monica. She's doing all the right things.
Thank you.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Monica, so much for being on the Dedicated Show. Thanks to the live audience who joined us. Stay tuned. We're going to have more shows every week, at least 2 or maybe even 3 per week starting next week. So it's gonna be super fun. Thank you again for joining, and we will see you online. Stay dedicated.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. And I'm going to put up a screen for a couple of seconds here so you could see where you can go to subscribe to the Dedicated Show content.